Welcome to Creating the Path, a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to create their own unique pathway to success and happiness. I'm your host, Heather Grace Hanson, and each week I'll be sharing tips and strategies to help you create the path to a life you love. Let's dive in. Hello, and thank you for listening today. I'm really excited about today's topic because it hits on the core of my mission with this podcast, which is to shift our mindset away from believing that the only way to succeed is to hustle and work really hard. And before I continue, I have to mention that my little dog Barkley is sleeping at my feet and he's snoring a little bit. Usually he's pretty quiet, but if you hear a little background noise, don't worry, that's just him. So let's get back to today's topic. Now, to start off this conversation, we first need to define the words hustle and success. Everyone can have their own slightly different definitions of words like these, so I want to make sure we're on the same page for what we're discussing here. Let's talk about hustling first. When I say that we all might have slightly different definitions of this word, it's because you can view hustling as a positive thing or a negative thing. And each of us might also have our own idea of how much work we need to be doing in order to say that we're hustling, right? So, what I consider to be hustling might be a slow day for Gary Vaynerchuk. And actually, let's change the word might to probably, right? So, it exists on a spectrum because we're talking about how much work we're doing and how many hours a day that we're working. And each of us will fall in different places on that spectrum. And we all have different levels of tolerance for the amount of work that we're doing. You might view the fact that you're hustling as a good thing or exciting, depending on what you're working on. Maybe it's a project that you're excited to finish as soon as possible. Or you can view hustling as a bad thing if you're just cranking through work you don't enjoy and getting burned out in the process, right? For the purposes of this conversation, though, I'm defining hustling as working to excess or working past your limits in those situations where hustling is burning you out. So now let's talk about the definition of success. It could be defined simply as achieving a goal. But what makes it different for each of us is that each of us has different goals. So success will look different for everyone. What gets tricky is, how do you know when you've succeeded? This is where success can fall on a spectrum. It depends on where you decide to set the bar for success and if you've made your goal clear enough so that you'll know when you get there. You can also set little mini goals along the way to a bigger goal and achieve all of those little successes along the way, or not. It all depends on how you decide to structure your goal setting and how you decide to view things. So, to recap all of that, basically, today we're talking about the fact that hustling, i.e., working to excess, is not necessary in order to succeed at whatever goals you decide to set for yourself. And I'm not saying that you can't succeed by hustling, just that it's not necessary. And I think the key thing to remember is that hustling is on a spectrum. If you're hustling for a specific period of time to finish a certain project, that may help you finish on time. And as long as you give yourself time to rest and recover afterwards so that you don't burn out, it doesn't have to become a bad thing. However, if you tip over that point and hustle to the point where you burn yourself out, that can actually prevent you from succeeding because when you're burned out, you aren't able to perform at your best and you don't have as much energy available because you've depleted all of it. And, you might be able to push through and keep working despite your exhaustion. I've definitely done that in the past, but the results likely won't be very good, and it's also detrimental to your physical and mental health. So, in this case, hustling can eventually become the thing that causes you to not succeed, or even if you do succeed in finishing something, you might still feel like you failed because the quality of your work wasn't as good as you wanted it to be. So, what's the alternative? The opposite of hustling and working too hard would be doing less and working less, right? I really believe that doing less is a more effective and faster way to achieve your goals. But I realize this is a difficult thing to believe because it took me a really long time to get to a place where I truly believed this. And honestly, I don't think I fully believed it until I actually implemented this in my own life and started experiencing the results. Before, though, I could never imagine this. When I was working really hard and doing all the things and still not making a lot of progress toward my most important goals, it seemed like the only possible reason could be that I wasn't doing enough. The problem, though, was that I was filling most of my time doing all the little tasks that either weren't important, didn't actually need to be done, or that just weren't the right things to move me in the direction I wanted to go. They all felt like urgent tasks or like they were necessary, but when I spent the time to take a deeper look and really get serious with myself about what was truly most important to me, and really be honest with myself about what would happen if I didn't do certain things, then I realized that I was spending way too much time doing things that didn't matter and that those things were actually keeping me from doing the work that would really move me forward. So for me, what making this shift looked like was to remove all of those unnecessary tasks off of my to do list and leaving behind or adding in only the tasks that were going to directly move me forward toward my top three most important goals. When I made this shift, I realized that before this, I was all over the place. I was working toward too many goals at a time. And in addition to that, I was doing tons of little tasks that actually didn't need to be done, leaving no time to work on the projects that were most important. And I know I'm not the only one who has a tendency to do this. It takes more mental energy to work on the important stuff. So our brain is most likely to want to take on those little easier tasks. The problem there is that there will never be an end to how many little tasks we can find to do. Believe me, I know this well. I will admit it's not always easy to resist the urge to procrastinate on the important work and do all those little tasks instead. But I can tell you, since I've started doing this in my own life, the mental effort that it takes up front to do the planning and clearing all that little work off of my plate is so worth it because I eliminate all the work that used to burn me out. And then my schedule is wide open to work on the stuff that's actually important. So now I'm doing less work, but since I'm doing the important work that I used to keep pushing off to the next day and the next day and so on, I'm actually finally making better progress than I used to toward the things that matter to me. Now, in future episodes, I'm going to talk more about how to actually implement this in your own life because believe me, I know it's difficult to even imagine how you could eliminate things from your to do list and your schedule. And I did talk about this a bit already in episode number 1 of the podcast. I went through my 3-phase intentional energy framework that helps you get clear on your goals and what your ideal life looks like so that you can clear everything else out that doesn't support that dream. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, definitely go back and listen to that one. And I would also love to hear from you. What feels most difficult for you when you think of actually doing this in your own life? or what questions are coming up for you right now. Let me know, because as I plan out future episodes, I'd love to address the issues that are top of mind for you right now. You can either send me a DM on Instagram or leave a comment on YouTube, and all the links are in the show notes below. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Creating the Path as much as I did. You can find the show notes for this and every episode at heathergracehanson.com/podcast. But before you go, make sure to hit the subscribe button. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Until then, have a fabulous week.